The restaurant was alive with chatter and laughter. Crystal chandeliers reflected soft light across the polished floors, and the gentle clinking of glasses created a rhythm that seemed almost musical on its own. Waiters moved briskly, carrying trays filled with carefully prepared dishes. Among them was a young waitress, quietly moving through the crowd with a calm grace. She had always preferred staying in the background, blending in with the hum of the restaurant, but there was something different about tonight. There was an energy in the air that made her senses tingle, a feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. She had been working here for several months, and though she had grown used to the busy shifts and demanding guests, she had never faced anyone like him. He was a man whose presence seemed to command the room without needing words. Dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, he had the kind of confidence that bordered on arrogance. Patrons watched him with curiosity and a hint of fear. He was a millionaire known for his wealth and his sharp tongue, a man who could make or break anyone's day with just a few words. The waitress had noticed him the moment he walked in. She couldn't help but feel a mix of nervousness and intrigue. She had served many important guests, but something about his gaze was different. It felt as if he was scanning the room, picking out people to test, to challenge. And soon enough, his eyes settled on her. He signaled for a table and was promptly seated. The restaurant staff moved quickly to cater to his every need, careful not to offend a man who clearly enjoyed control. The waitress approached, her steps measured, heart beating a little faster than usual. She greeted him politely, asking what he would like to drink. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he observed her, leaning back in his chair with a smirk playing on his lips. There was a pause, heavy and deliberate, as if he was considering something mischievous. Finally, he spoke, his voice smooth but carrying a note of mockery. "I hear you have a piano here. Can you play?" The waitress blinked, caught off guard. It was a simple question, but there was something in the way he asked it that made it feel like a trap. She nodded politely, unsure how to respond further. The millionaire's smirk widened. "Good. Play for us, then. Right now." His tone left no room for refusal. The restaurant fell into a brief silence, the chatter fading as the staff and patrons turned their attention toward the young waitress. She felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, a pressure she had never experienced before. Her palms grew slightly sweaty, and for a moment, she felt the panic rising. This was not just another shift. This was a moment that could define her, though she didn't yet realize it. She took a deep breath and moved toward the piano tucked in a corner of the dining area. It was an old, elegant instrument, polished to a shine, waiting patiently as if it knew the moment was coming. The millionaire leaned back in his chair, watching with a sense of cruel anticipation. He expected her to falter, to struggle, to provide entertainment in the form of embarrassment. He enjoyed moments like this, when he could assert control and remind others of their place. The waitress sat down on the piano bench, hands hovering over the keys. She felt the nervous energy coursing through her, but beneath it, there was a spark of something else, something she had hidden from the world. Music had been her secret companion for years. She had spent countless hours practicing in the solitude of her small apartment, teaching herself to feel every note, every rhythm, every emotion. She had never performed in front of anyone, but she knew she could. And now, in the most unexpected and intimidating circumstances, that hidden talent would have its chance. Her first touch of the keys was tentative, cautious, almost apologetic. The notes sounded fragile, barely filling the room. She felt the millionaire's eyes on her, sharp and expectant, as if daring her to fail. But then something shifted. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memory of hours spent practicing wash over her. She remembered the countless melodies that had flowed from her fingers when no one was listening, the way music had always been her refuge, her escape, her voice. As she began to play with more confidence, the initial fragility transformed into a gentle, captivating tune. The restaurant seemed to lean in, the clinking of glasses and soft chatter fading into the background. Patrons who had been curious now became attentive, their interest piqued by the unexpected beauty of the music. Even the staff paused, holding their breath, as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. The millionaire's smirk faltered slightly. He hadn't expected her to play so well. His plan to humiliate her was beginning to unravel, though he tried to maintain his composure. His eyes narrowed, a flash of surprise crossing his face before he masked it with an attempt at indifference. But it was too late. The music was taking over, transforming the atmosphere of the restaurant, turning the moment into something remarkable. The waitress continued, letting her fingers move naturally, effortlessly. Every note carried emotion. Every chord expressed her story. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist, sharing a part of herself that had been hidden away for so long. The patrons were captivated, the energy in the room shifting from curiosity and expectation to admiration and wonder. The millionaire, for all his wealth and power, found himself unprepared for the impact of her talent. As the last notes lingered in the air, there was a brief silence, followed by soft applause. It started with one or two patrons, then grew into a ripple of appreciation that filled the restaurant. The waitress opened her eyes, slightly flushed but smiling, realizing that she had not only faced the challenge, but had transformed it into a moment of triumph. The initial fear and embarrassment had melted away, replaced by pride and a quiet joy. The millionaire leaned back, a complex mixture of surprise, irritation, and perhaps grudging respect crossing his face. He had intended to control the situation, to embarrass the young waitress, but the tables had turned. She had taken what was meant to humiliate her, and turned it into an unforgettable performance that left everyone in awe. The waitress returned to her duties, carrying herself with a newfound confidence. The patrons whispered among themselves, sharing their admiration and disbelief. The staff exchanged glances, clearly impressed and proud of their colleague. And in that moment, the restaurant was no longer just a place for dining. It had become a stage for an extraordinary revelation, a moment when hidden talent and courage shone brighter than wealth and arrogance. The night continued, but the memory of that unexpected performance lingered. The millionaire, though still present, was a different presence now, less dominant, slightly humbled by the young woman's skill and courage. And the waitress, once just another face in the crowd, had become someone unforgettable, her music leaving a lasting mark on everyone who had witnessed it. It was the beginning of a story that would be told again and again, a story of quiet talent, unexpected triumph, and the reminder that true skill and heart can shine through even the most intimidating challenges. The applause slowly died down, leaving a calm but expectant hush in the restaurant. The waitress returned to her station, carrying plates and drinks as though nothing extraordinary had happened. But her hands still trembled slightly from the adrenaline. She had faced a moment she had never imagined, a moment that could have humiliated her. Yet she had transformed it into something magical. Patrons were still whispering, their eyes occasionally flicking toward her with admiration and surprise. Back at the table, the millionaire leaned forward slightly, a look of irritation crossing his face. He had expected a performance full of nervous mistakes, perhaps stammered notes and awkward pauses. But what he had witnessed instead was skill, emotion, and confidence. He shifted in his chair, the smirk that had once adorned his face now replaced by something more complex. There was a flicker of disbelief and even a hint of respect, though he would never admit it aloud. The waitress tried to focus on her tasks, serving guests and taking orders, but the weight of the night pressed on her. She kept her smile polite and professional, but inside, her mind replayed every note she had played. She remembered the tension she had felt at the first few hesitant touches of the keys, the moment when fear almost overtook her, and the transformation that had come as she allowed her talent to take control. Each memory made her heart race again, this time with pride rather than fear. Meanwhile, the patrons had started to recover from their initial shock. Conversations resumed, but the tone had changed. Where there had once been ordinary chatter, now there was excitement, admiration, and curiosity. Guests leaned toward each other, whispering about the waitress who had revealed such extraordinary talent. Some approached her after the performance, offering compliments, smiles, and even small gestures of appreciation. It was overwhelming but heartwarming, and she accepted it with humble grace, not wanting to appear boastful. Her colleagues watched with amazement. Many had known she was quiet and diligent, but they had never suspected the depth of her skill. They exchanged quiet whispers and encouraging smiles, proud that one of their own had left such a strong impression on the restaurant's high-profile clientele. The atmosphere among the staff was electric, a mixture of camaraderie, pride, and a little disbelief. They had all witnessed a transformation, a moment where a young woman had stepped into the spotlight and claimed it, despite the intentions of someone who sought to belittle her. The millionaire, on the other hand, was struggling internally. He was used to being in control, to directing situations, and to having people respond to his whims. The sense of superiority that had been so natural to him was now unsettled. He had underestimated her, thinking that wealth and authority could dictate outcomes, and yet here was a young waitress who had turned his plan on its head. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, trying to maintain a composed exterior, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. Despite the attention and the pressure, the waitress found a strange sense of calm settling over her. She had faced a challenge, a moment designed to humiliate her, and she had overcome it. She realized that fear and nervousness were temporary, but skill and confidence, when nurtured, could carry a person through even the most daunting situations. The realization was empowering, filling her with a quiet strength she hadn't known she possessed. Her mind wandered to her past, to the countless hours she had spent practicing in solitude. Music had always been a secret passion, something she had pursued in quiet moments away from the demands of work and life. She had never sought recognition, preferring instead to allow her fingers to express what words could not. And yet, in that unexpected moment, all those hours of practice and dedication had converged into a single performance that left an indelible mark on everyone present. As she moved through the restaurant, taking orders and delivering dishes, she noticed subtle changes in the way patrons interacted with her. Some lingered slightly longer at their tables, watching her with curiosity and admiration. Others whispered excitedly to their companions, clearly sharing the story of her unexpected performance. Even the regular guests who had been indifferent to the staff seemed to view her differently now. She was no longer just a waitress. She was someone who had revealed a hidden depth, someone who had taken a challenge meant to belittle her and transformed it into a display of skill, courage, and grace. The millionaire observed all of this, his expression unreadable. He had anticipated amusement at her expense, perhaps a few awkward laughs, and a moment of superiority to reinforce his own ego. But none of that had happened. Instead, he found himself confronted with something he had not expected: talent, confidence, and the quiet dignity of someone who refused to be diminished by circumstance or power. It was unsettling, and though he would never verbalize it, there was a lesson in humility being written in the tension that now filled his presence. The waitress continued her work, balancing plates and conversation with effortless skill. She was aware of the eyes that followed her, the whispers that spread from table to table, and yet she maintained her composure. Her performance had been brief, but its impact was lasting. She had proven to herself and to everyone watching that she was more than her title, more than her position in the restaurant, and more than anyone's expectations. It was a small victory in one sense, but in another it was monumental. Even as the night progressed, the energy of her performance lingered. Patrons discussed it, sharing stories and impressions with each other. Some had even pulled out their phones to quietly record snippets of the piano performance, though she was unaware of it. The sense of awe and admiration created a ripple effect, spreading through the restaurant and leaving a lasting impression. The atmosphere was no longer just casual dining. It had been transformed by the presence of unexpected talent, by courage under pressure, and by a reminder that appearances could be deceiving. The waitress felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. She had been pushed to an extreme, faced a test she never asked for, and yet had risen to the occasion. The realization filled her with quiet pride and a renewed sense of self-worth. She had discovered a strength within herself that was resilient, capable, and unafraid of challenges. And though the millionaire still sat at his table, his eyes fixed on her with a complicated mixture of emotions, she no longer feared him or what he might think. She had shown her true self, and that was enough. Her colleagues continued to watch, exchanging smiles and nods, silently acknowledging what had just occurred. There was an unspoken understanding that they had all witnessed something extraordinary. The young waitress had faced adversity, judgment, and expectation, and had emerged not only unscathed but elevated. Her courage and talent had transformed the evening, leaving a mark on everyone who had been present. Even in the quiet moments, as she moved through the restaurant, her mind replayed the performance. She remembered each note, each chord, and the way the music had flowed naturally from her hands. The memory was comforting, a reminder that she was capable of more than she had ever realized. She understood that this night was not just an event, but a turning point, a moment that could shape her confidence, her ambitions, and her understanding of what she could achieve. As the restaurant gradually returned to its regular rhythm, the waitress felt a sense of satisfaction and hope. She had faced an unexpected challenge, and in doing so, had discovered not just her own talent, but also the power of courage and self-belief. The millionaire remained at his table, a silent witness to her success, perhaps reflecting on the unexpected lesson he had received. And for the waitress, the night was a reminder that even in moments designed to intimidate or embarrass, there was an opportunity to shine, to reveal hidden strengths, and to leave an unforgettable impression on the world around her. The restaurant had slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but an invisible tension lingered in the air, a residue from the unexpected performance earlier. The young waitress moved among the tables, refilling glasses and taking orders, but the memory of the piano still occupied her mind. Each key she had pressed seemed to echo inside her, a reminder of the courage she had summoned and the music she had shared. It was as if a small part of her had been released into the room, a part that would not be confined again. Meanwhile, the millionaire sat at his table, observing her quietly. There was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, a sharp contrast to the smug arrogance he usually carried. He had expected her to falter, to provide entertainment through failure, but instead, he had witnessed something genuine, something unexpected. He leaned back, crossing his arms, and for the first time that evening he felt uncertain. He didn't like it, and yet he couldn't look away. There was a challenge in her talent that he had not anticipated. The waitress returned to the piano, partly out of habit and partly because a quiet pull urged her to play again. She hesitated for a moment, aware of the eyes that might be on her. But this time, there was no command, no expectation to humiliate her. The moment was hers, and she let herself breathe deeply, feeling the familiar comfort of the instrument beneath her hands. The keys welcomed her, familiar and soothing, and she began to play again, softly at first, testing the melody that had taken shape in her mind. As the first notes filled the room, heads turned, curiosity sparking in the faces of patrons who had not been present for the earlier performance. Some paused mid-conversation, drawn toward the piano, while others stopped what they were doing entirely. The waitress closed her eyes, letting her fingers move naturally, allowing the music to flow freely. It was no longer tentative or cautious. It was confident, expressive, and deliberate. Each note carried her emotion, a story she had kept hidden until now. The restaurant seemed to quiet further, the usual background sounds fading until only the piano remained. The atmosphere shifted from casual dining to an intimate concert, even though no one had planned it. The guests felt it in their chests, a resonance that was impossible to ignore. The young waitress was no longer just a server. She was a storyteller, using music instead of words to convey her journey, her feelings, and her quiet strength. The millionaire's expression changed. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, eyes fixed on her. There was disbelief there, but also something he would never admit: admiration. The skill she displayed was undeniable, each note precise yet full of life. He realized that his expectation of failure had blinded him to the possibility of talent and courage. This simple act of playing the piano had revealed depths of character and skill that he had not anticipated, and for the first time in a long while, he felt uncertain of his own superiority. Other staff members paused in their work, watching quietly. They had known she was diligent and capable, but this was something else entirely. The performance revealed a side of her that no one in the restaurant had ever seen before, a side that demanded respect and attention. The energy in the room was palpable, a shared acknowledgement that this was extraordinary. Patrons whispered to each other, exchanging astonished glances, and a few discreetly pulled out phones to record the moment, capturing the magic for later. The music swelled, and with each rising note, the young waitress's confidence grew. She remembered the countless hours spent practicing alone, each session a private testament to her dedication and passion. That solitude had built her skill, and now it allowed her to play freely, without fear of judgment or failure. She realized that this moment, unplanned and unexpected, was a culmination of all those small, private victories. It was her talent shining unmasked, raw and beautiful. The millionaire's smirk, once so confident, had disappeared entirely. He was silent, absorbed in the unexpected beauty of her performance. For a man used to controlling every situation, the realization that he could not dictate this moment was unsettling. The music had taken on a life of its own, independent of his intentions, and it left him powerless to interfere. The power he had assumed was nothing compared to the quiet authority of someone who knew their own abilities and was unafraid to show them. The patrons responded subtly at first, a quiet nod here, a soft smile there. But as the melody grew richer, deeper, and more intricate, the reaction became more pronounced. People leaned forward in their seats, mesmerized by the unexpected brilliance before them. It was impossible to ignore the skill and emotion that flowed from the young woman's fingers. Even those who had been skeptical, those who had assumed she was simply a waitress without remarkable abilities, could not deny the reality of what they were hearing. Each note seemed to tell a story, and the story was as much about courage as it was about music. It was about a person who had been underestimated, who had faced fear and judgment, and who had turned it all into something beautiful. Patrons felt the honesty of it, the truth that could not be faked, and it touched them in a way that went beyond simple entertainment. The music had a human quality, a sincerity that made it impossible to look away or dismiss. The young waitress's hands moved fluidly, each movement precise yet flowing, as if the piano were an extension of her own body. She was fully immersed, no longer aware of the eyes watching her or the millionaire sitting with a mixture of shock and admiration. She was playing for herself, and in doing so, she played for everyone present. Her music became a bridge between her world and theirs, a connection forged through skill, emotion, and presence. By the time she reached the middle of her piece, the restaurant was completely captivated. Conversations had ceased, the usual background noise gone, replaced by the steady, mesmerizing flow of her performance. Patrons exchanged glances, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing something rare and extraordinary. The young waitress felt a subtle warmth of pride, not arrogance, but a recognition that her private passion had become a shared experience that moved others. It was a powerful feeling, one she had never known she could express in public. The millionaire shifted slightly in his seat, clearly affected. He had believed that wealth, power, and status could create control over others, that people would respond according to his will. Yet here was a person who had not only defied his expectations but had done so with grace, skill, and dignity. He realized that true power did not always come from control, but from the ability to create, to inspire, and to share one's talents authentically. It was a lesson he had not expected to learn that evening. The piece reached its crescendo, each note resonating through the room, echoing off the walls and into the hearts of those listening. Patrons were silent, almost holding their breath, caught in the intensity of the moment. The young waitress's fingers danced over the keys with confidence and emotion, and the story embedded in the music became impossible to ignore. It was not just a display of talent. It was a statement, a revelation of character, determination, and grace. When the last note lingered and slowly faded, there was a pause, a moment of quiet reflection before the room erupted into applause. It started softly, tentative claps from a few patrons, then grew into a thunderous, appreciative response that filled the restaurant. The young waitress rose from the piano bench, her face flushed with exertion and exhilaration, yet she carried herself with humility and composure. She had faced the unplanned challenge, embraced it, and turned it into something unforgettable. Patrons approached her, offering compliments, smiles, and words of encouragement. Even staff members who had been busy with their duties took a moment to acknowledge what had occurred, exchanging looks of admiration and pride. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the memory of the performance and the sense that they had witnessed a moment of real, human talent that transcended ordinary expectations. The millionaire remained seated, absorbing what had just happened. His expression was a complex mixture of surprise, contemplation, and grudging respect. He had intended to assert power, to ridicule and humiliate, but the outcome had been entirely different. He was reminded that assumptions could be wrong, that true skill and courage could not be manufactured or bought, and that the impact of genuine talent was far more powerful than wealth or authority. The young waitress returned to her station, serving tables with renewed confidence. She moved gracefully, aware of the admiration around her but not allowing it to alter her demeanor. The memory of her performance lingered in her mind, a reminder of her own strength and ability. She had faced fear, defied expectation, and shared a hidden part of herself with the world. And in doing so, she had created a moment that would be remembered long after the restaurant lights dimmed for the night. The restaurant was alive with quiet excitement, a sense of anticipation lingering in the air as the young waitress approached the piano once again. Patrons had been amazed by her previous performance, but there was a growing curiosity about what she would do next. The energy in the room felt almost electric, as though everyone sensed that something extraordinary was about to happen. She took a deep breath and sat down at the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys for just a moment before she began to play. This time, there was no hesitation. The first notes flowed with clarity and confidence, filling the restaurant with a melody that was both delicate and powerful. Each movement of her fingers seemed effortless, as if the piano had become a natural extension of her body. The patrons leaned forward in their seats, captivated by the music, drawn into a world that was being created in real time. The millionaire, seated at his table, watched intently. His earlier amusement had faded, replaced by a sense of disbelief. He had expected to see a young woman falter, to watch her struggle under pressure, and yet she played with such skill and emotion that it left him momentarily speechless. He realized that his plan to humiliate her had completely backfired. Instead of embarrassment, she had delivered a performance that was mesmerizing, commanding attention without any need for words. As she continued to play, the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the music and the emotions it carried. The melody was intricate, each note carefully chosen, yet it flowed naturally, almost as if it were telling a story that had been waiting to be told. Patrons were silent, their eyes fixed on her hands as they moved across the keys, creating a sound that was both haunting and beautiful. It was impossible not to feel the emotion in every note, the quiet strength and determination that had driven her to this moment. Staff members paused in their work, unable to tear their eyes away from the performance. They had known she was talented, but this was beyond anything they could have imagined. It was more than just technical skill. It was the expression of her heart and soul, the embodiment of years of practice, dedication, and passion. The energy in the room was palpable, a shared experience that united everyone in awe and admiration. The millionaire leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, a look of contemplation on his face. He had been used to being in control, to having his will shape the world around him, but here was a young woman who had turned the situation on its head. He realized that true power did not lie in wealth or status, but in the ability to create, to inspire, and to move people. He could not help but feel a grudging respect for her, though he would never admit it aloud. The melody grew richer and more complex, building in intensity as the waitress allowed her emotions to guide her fingers. She was no longer simply performing. She was sharing a piece of herself, revealing the depth of her talent and the courage it had taken to step into the spotlight. The patrons felt it, their hearts responding to the sincerity and beauty of her music. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others watched with wide-eyed amazement, unable to look away. Every note seemed to tell a a story of resilience, determination, and quiet strength. The young waitress had faced a challenge that was designed to belittle her, and she had met it with grace and skill. Her music became a voice for all those who had ever been underestimated, a reminder that true talent and courage could not be confined or diminished. The restaurant was transformed, no longer just a place to dine, but a stage for an unforgettable revelation of human spirit. The millionaire shifted slightly, his expression softening as he listened. He had underestimated her, and in doing so, he had witnessed a display of excellence that he could neither ignore nor replicate. His presence, once dominant and intimidating, now seemed secondary to the power of her performance. He was forced to confront the reality that talent and courage could command attention in ways that wealth and authority never could. As the piece reached its climax, the music swelled with emotion, filling every corner of the restaurant. Patrons were on the edge of their seats, captivated by the intensity and beauty of the performance. Each chord resonated deeply, creating a sense of connection between the audience and the musician. It was a moment of pure artistry, a demonstration of what could be achieved when skill, passion, and courage converged. The young waitress's fingers moved with precision and fluidity, each note perfectly placed, yet full of life and emotion. She was completely absorbed in the music, unaware of the collective gaze upon her. It was as if time had slowed, and the restaurant existed only within the notes she played. The performance was a testament to her dedication, the countless hours of practice and perseverance that had prepared her for this moment, even if she had never imagined it would come in such a setting. When the final note lingered and faded, there was a moment of stunned silence. The patrons blinked, as though emerging from a dream, and then applause erupted, filling the room with a sound that was both thunderous and heartfelt. People rose from their seats, clapping and cheering, moved by what they had witnessed. The staff exchanged glances of pride and amazement, acknowledging that they had just been part of something truly extraordinary. The young waitress stood, slightly breathless, her cheeks flushed from exertion and exhilaration. She allowed herself a small, humble smile, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear and expectation, and she had transformed it into something beautiful, leaving an indelible impression on everyone present. The performance was more than just music. It was a declaration of her strength, talent, and resilience. The millionaire remained seated, his hands folded in front of him, a complex expression on his face. He had intended to dominate, to humiliate, and yet he had been rendered powerless by the very thing he sought to control. He had witnessed a young woman rise above intimidation and expectation, using her talent and courage to command attention and admiration. For the first time that evening, he experienced humility, a quiet recognition that power and authority were not always absolute. Patrons approached the waitress, offering compliments, words of praise, and expressions of genuine admiration. Some spoke of the emotion they had felt, others marveled at her technical skill, and all were united in their appreciation of her courage and talent. Even those who had initially doubted her now acknowledged her extraordinary ability, their skepticism replaced by respect and awe. The staff of the restaurant surrounded her briefly, sharing smiles and whispered congratulations. They had known her as a diligent and capable colleague, but this performance had revealed a depth of talent and strength that none had fully anticipated. The atmosphere was charged with pride, admiration, and a sense of shared wonder at what had just occurred. As the restaurant gradually returned to its normal rhythm, the impact of the performance lingered. Patrons spoke of it in hushed tones, recounting the experience to friends and companions, while staff members reflected on the quiet courage that had been displayed. The young waitress moved through her duties with renewed confidence, aware that she had not only faced a challenge, but had also left an unforgettable mark on everyone present. The millionaire, still seated at his table, finally leaned back and exhaled, a subtle but meaningful gesture. He had learned a lesson he had not anticipated, one that could not be taught by wealth, power, or intimidation. Talent, courage, and authenticity had triumphed, leaving an impression that would remain long after the night ended. The young waitress had transformed what was meant to belittle her into a moment of beauty, inspiration, an unforgettable human connection. As she continued to work, the young waitress felt a sense of quiet satisfaction and pride. She had faced fear, embraced her talent, and shared it with the world in a way that was both humbling and empowering. The applause and admiration of the patrons, the pride of her colleagues, and the subtle respect of the millionaire were all reminders of what could be achieved when skill, courage, and authenticity converged. The night had revealed not just her musical ability, but the strength and resilience of her character, leaving a lasting impression on all who had witnessed it. The applause had died down, but the energy in the restaurant lingered, a quiet hum of admiration and excitement. The young waitress had returned to her station, carrying herself with a newfound confidence that was subtle but unmistakable. Patrons continued to talk quietly about what they had witnessed, their voices filled with awe. Some lingered longer at their tables, as if hoping to catch another glimpse of the person who had transformed the night into something unforgettable. She moved through her tasks with ease, balancing plates, refilling glasses, and taking orders. Each movement was graceful, her actions confident but not boastful. She had faced a moment of fear and pressure and had turned it into a triumph. It was more than just a piano performance. It was a statement about her courage, her talent, and the quiet strength that had always been part of her character. Patrons who had doubted her before could now see her true depth, and even those who had been indifferent were now captivated. The millionaire sat at his table, observing in a thoughtful silence. He had come into the evening expecting to assert control and derive amusement at someone else's expense. Instead, he had witnessed a young woman rise above his intentions with skill, grace, and courage. He realized that wealth and power could not command respect in the same way genuine talent and authenticity could. Though he did not speak, a quiet respect began to replace his initial arrogance, a recognition that this young waitress had achieved something remarkable. Her colleagues watched with pride, exchanging subtle smiles and glances that spoke of admiration and shared excitement. They had known her as diligent and capable, but this performance revealed a depth of skill and courage they had never seen before. It was a moment that would be remembered among the staff for a long time, a shared memory of witnessing a colleague step into the spotlight and shine. The young waitress felt a sense of peace and satisfaction settle over her. She had faced the unexpected, the intimidating, and had emerged victorious. It was a triumph that extended beyond the applause and admiration of others. She had proven to herself that she could handle pressure, that her talent was real, and that she could share it in a way that moved others. For the first time, she understood that her skills and courage were not something to hide. They were a gift she could offer to the world. Patrons continued to approach her, offering kind words and compliments. Some spoke of the emotions they had felt while listening. Others marveled at her technical skill. She listened politely, offering humble thanks, aware of the impact her performance had on them. Each compliment reinforced the realization that her abilities could inspire, uplift, and connect people in ways she had not previously imagined. The millionaire finally spoke, his tone calm but carrying an unexpected sincerity. He complimented her skill, acknowledging that he had underestimated her. The words were brief, but they carried weight. It was a recognition that she had not just played music but had also demonstrated strength, confidence, and grace under pressure. He had intended to control the situation, to embarrass her, but she had transformed it into a moment of empowerment and beauty. The young waitress nodded politely, accepting the acknowledgement without arrogance. She knew that her performance had been about more than pleasing one person. It had been about embracing her talent and facing the challenge with integrity. The applause and admiration of the crowd were affirmations, but the true triumph was in her own understanding of her strength and skill. As the evening progressed, the restaurant returned to its normal rhythm, but the atmosphere remained charged with the memory of the performance. Patrons continued to discuss what they had witnessed, sharing their excitement and awe with friends and family. The staff carried themselves with a subtle pride, aware that they had been part of a night that would be remembered for its unexpected display of talent and courage. The young waitress moved through her work, her confidence growing with each task. She realized that this experience had changed her in a profound way. She had discovered that fear could be faced, that expectations could be exceeded, and that hidden talents could emerge in moments of challenge. It was a lesson in courage, self-belief, and the power of embracing one's abilities. Even after the patrons had left and the restaurant quieted, the memory of her performance lingered. She thought about the hours of practice and dedication that had brought her to this moment, and she felt a sense of gratitude for the journey that had shaped her. The music that had flowed from her fingers was more than notes on a page. It was an expression of who she was, a reflection of her determination and heart. The millionaire left quietly, his demeanor reflective. He had come with intentions of asserting dominance, but he had left with a lesson in humility and respect. He had witnessed someone rise above intimidation and expectation, turning a moment designed to belittle into one of inspiration and beauty. His respect for her talent and character, though silent, was undeniable. The young waitress remained at her station, smiling softly to herself. She had faced a challenge, transformed it into an opportunity, and left a lasting impression on everyone present. The evening had proven that true talent, courage, and authenticity could shine even in the most unexpected circumstances. She understood now that her abilities were not just for herself but could touch the lives of others, inspire, and create connections. As she finished her shift and stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air felt refreshing. She carried with her a sense of accomplishment, pride, and hope. The world had witnessed her talent and courage, but more importantly, she had witnessed it herself. The experience had given her a confidence that could not be shaken, a reminder that even in moments of fear and challenge, she could rise, shine, and inspire. Her story, though unexpected, was a testament to the power of perseverance, self-belief, and embracing one's talents. It was a reminder that moments of pressure and potential humiliation could be transformed into opportunities for growth and triumph. The applause, admiration, and recognition were fleeting, but the lessons she learned and the strength she discovered would remain with her forever. The young waitress walked home that night, reflecting on the journey she had undertaken. She thought about the audience, the staff, the millionaire, and the music itself. Each element had contributed to a moment that would stay with her, a moment that validated her abilities and her courage. She realized that her talent was not just a skill but a voice, a way to express herself and impact the world around her. As she closed the door to her small apartment, she felt a sense of calm and fulfillment. The evening had been more than a challenge. It had been a revelation. She had faced fear, exceeded expectations, and shared her gift with others. The experience had transformed her, leaving her stronger, more confident, and ready to embrace whatever challenges might come next. In the quiet of her room, she allowed herself to think about the future. The performance had opened new possibilities, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She understood now that her abilities could take her places she had never imagined, that courage and skill could overcome fear and intimidation, and that authenticity and dedication were more powerful than wealth or status. The night was over, but the impact of her courage, talent, and determination would resonate far beyond the restaurant. She had faced an unexpected test, and she had triumphed. Her story, simple yet extraordinary, was a testament to the power of believing in oneself, embracing one's abilities, and rising above challenges with grace and determination. It was a reminder that talent, courage, and authenticity could transform ordinary moments into unforgettable experiences, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who witnessed them.